If your calendar is filling up, does that mean that your pricing is working? Not necessarily. In fact, if you're sitting at 100% occupancy, there's a very real chance you're leaving money on the table. Hey friend, I'm Stacy St. John and I'm a short-term rental investor and property manager, and I manage a portfolio of 45 properties. And one of the things I've learned is that revenue management isn't about getting every single night booked. It's about getting the right bookings at the right price and knowing how to read the data so you can tell the difference. And that's exactly what we're digging into in this second PriceLabs training video. Kyle from PriceLabs is going to show us the specific metrics inside PriceLabs that can tell you whether your pricing is actually healthy, how your rates compare to your market, whether your minimum price could be holding you back, and how to build a comp set that actually makes sense for your property. And be sure to stay with us till the end, because we're also going to tackle a question I think every host needs to know how to answer. If you're not getting the bookings you want, how do you know whether your price is the problem or your listing is the problem? And that distinction matters, because lowering your rates when price isn't actually a problem can cost you a whole lot of money. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we are joined by Kyle Driscoll, a senior solutions consultant at PriceLabs. Kyle, thank you so much for being here.
I'm super excited to join you.
I'm so pumped to do this video because, so often folks are scratching their head wondering if their pricing is right. And so in this video, we're going to walk through within the PriceLabs tool, discovering how do I know when my price is right? How do I actually measure that? One thing that I think a lot of people assume is that they're 100% booked. That's a good thing, but maybe not. What say you?
100% occupancy with really great ADR is the dream. It's very hard to achieve. So if you are at 100% occupancy, unless you are lucky and you've gotten a long-term stay or, one of those snowbird type of stays, odds are you probably left a little bit of money on the table, most likely during a peak type of a day. So there's probably some money left on the table if you're sitting at 100% occupancy.
There you go. All right. So what I would love, if you're open to it, let's have you share your screen and let's have you walk us through, how do I measure when my pricing is right, or if my pricing is right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I want to show the audience is how you can set your PriceLabs up to be a little bit easier to identify some things that are going to matter for you. And I think today a lot of what we're going to talk about is it's a metric that's called RevPAR. It comes from the hotel industry. You could refer to it in our industry also as RevPAN, which is revenue per available night. But what that is, it takes your occupancy and your ADR, and it gives you a metric for you to look at. So I'm going to start by coming over here on my pricing dashboard, and I'm going to go to add metrics. And I've got a few that are already in here, so we're going to move some things around, and you can see how I do that. Oh, and I missed it. There we go. Yeah. And I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to add my RevPAR metric as well. And I'm going to look at that over the past 60 days here. Now I've got that added. I've also got 30 here. Let's move these up top. And we will discuss those. All right, so before I get off of here, I do want to recommend anybody that's newer with PriceLabs, these three metrics: recommended base price to base price ratio, minimum price hitting days over the next 30 days, and bookings pickup over the past 15 days will be very beneficial for you. So if you have the time, load those into your pricing dashboard, and we'll talk about those as well. So I'm going to update this. And now I've got some good data here to look at. Not 100% sure why it just hopped into my listing, but hey, we'll figure it out. Let's get this going.
Taking us on a little tour.
Yep, absolutely. So one other thing to preface in this, if you look at some of these metrics, my metrics don't look all that great. It's a fake listing. I got to put dummy data in there, and unfortunately did not do that today. But RevPAR, right here, I'm hovering over the I. This is the average revenue you earn for each listing based on every bookable night that you have, regardless of whether they were booked or not. So again, it's your ADR and your occupancy merged together. ADR being the average daily rate that you can choose. But this is the North Star metric that we're looking for. It's what PriceLabs goes after. And I think the simplest way I can say it is during peak season, we're going to try to really maximize that demand and try to get the rates as hot, not necessarily gouging or anything like that, but we're going to try to get them up a little bit. On low seasons, on shoulder seasons, we're going to be trying to get as much occupancy in the market as we can. And ultimately, that's going to lead to the greatest revenue possibility for you. So RevPAR is that North Star for you. These three metrics are going to help you identify in PriceLabs if there's something that you may need to move around on. Now, bookings pick up right here. This is important, especially if you are using the OTAs. It's particularly Airbnb, because if you haven't had a booking in the past 14 days, you start to get dinged down just a little bit. It's not going to kill you, but you want to have consistent bookings coming in. You also don't want to get 6 or 7 bookings in a 2-day period and not be able to see it very quickly and adjust. So this one's important just for understanding, hey, am I getting booked up? This one's important for understanding, where does PriceLabs think I need to move my base price? We can see it's a 1 right now, so my base price is dialed in, so to speak. And then minimum price hitting days is really useful in a couple of different situations. The first situation is if you're in low season, understanding that you're already at your minimum price and you don't really have anywhere else to go can be very, very impactful to you. But it also lets you know, like in this situation, maybe there's some days that don't have the value that they should. So I love having those 3 in there. But RevPAR is what we're ultimately chasing here. And generally speaking, you're not going to have incredibly high RevPAR, or you're not going to beat last year usually if you have that 100% occupancy.
Gotcha. Now, I have a few questions I would love to have you answer if it's okay.
Yeah,
The metric where you just said, hey, it's at a 1, so it means that I've got my pricing really dialed in. What if it's a 0.5, or what if it's a 1.5? What do those variances mean?
Yeah. So anytime it varies down, if it's a 0.96, then that's going to recommend that you take 4% off of your base price. If you are a 1.05, that means we recommend going up 5%. So you're going to be able to see that right there, hit review prices, and then come right over here and do help me choose a base price. And it will basically let you click the button that takes you to that price that you're looking at. Now, on the other side of this, to help our customers out, if we think there's enough impact, like if it is a 5% or more variance, you're going to be able to very easily click a light bulb button right here and just automatically update it from there. Now, this is the simplest way to see if the way PriceLabs analyzes is this dialed in. But again, base price drives all of your rates. You're going to want to pay attention to a little bit more market data in there. Now, I hope I don't get too heavy for the audience, but hopefully what I can show you here is a bunch of information, but condense it to something very simple to understand. Neighborhood data will be your friend, especially if you want to learn the tool. Now, I'm going to click in here, and there's going to be a little bit of noise. We see some lines, we see some chaos and all that, but we can walk through this real quick together to better understand where my pricing sits. So right now, my black line that we see right here, that's exactly where my rate sits at in the market. This gray area, that's the 25th to 50th percentile. You could think of this as the bottom end of the market. The darker pink, that's 50th to 75th. And then light pink is 75th to 90th percentile. Ultimately, you need to make sure that if you're not getting booked up, if it's lower season for you, you want to be more towards this bottom end. If it's more of a peak season or more in high demand, you're going to want to make sure that you're up towards this top end like this. But understanding what's happening in the market is very, very, very beneficial for you. Now, PriceLabs is doing all of this for you. The reason that we're spiking the rates up a little bit right here for Lollapalooza in Chicago, if I come down and I look at my occupancy chart, I can see the market is currently at 93% occupied. Yes, it's actually 96% occupied. I misspoke on there. We're outperforming last year. Only 4% of the market's still available. Now, people probably aren't going to pay, $400 for this type of a property, but all of this is what's driving it. So when you see your rate spiking like this right here for Chicago Marathon, it's because of this right here. The market finished really well last year. It was at 100% occupied. This year, it's at 72% occupancy versus as of today last year, it was at 58%. So it's pacing way ahead. There's more booking velocity. You can expect this to land at 100% again. So that's kind of why rates are elevated there for you.
Got it. Love it. Love it. And speaking of Lollapalooza, I had my first Lollapalooza experience. I was in Chicago back in the day on business when I was in the corporate world, and I had no idea what Lollapalooza was. And
That's awesome.
I was on the top floor of the Kraft Heinz building in Chicago, and I could hear the music all the way down on the ground. It was wild. Wild.
That is so awesome. That's one of those festivals I've always wanted to get to, but the bands just aren't the same for me anymore, unfortunately.
I love it. I love it. So I would love to also hear from your perspective. I wanted to ask you this. Where you said the 20%, it's hitting the minimum price 20% of the time. From your vantage point, what is the ideal percentage we should be looking for?
Yeah, I don't know that there's necessarily an ideal percentage. I would not personally want to be more than 33%. So 1 in 3 days being towards minimum is what I'd be looking at. So if we're sitting here looking at these properties that I've got right here, this right here, my property that's in Knoxville, Tennessee, it's at 41% for the minimum price hitting days. That tells me a couple of things. One, I might have missed the booking window. It also tells me that right now my rates are no longer able to move. So if my competition moves, they might end up getting booked up. They might be placed a little bit higher. But again, it doesn't necessarily, you can always come in and tweak that min price if you need to. But if you have a rigid minimum price, you don't have to get in there and change it for it. Don't think that my advice is to always just keep lowering your minimum price. PriceLabs isn't in the game of getting you the lowest rate possible. We're in the game of getting you the proper rate at the proper time.
Got it. And at the same time, if someone was like, oh my gosh, I've got to get bookings and I'm hitting minimum price 41% of the time, and they don't necessarily have a specific floor yet, maybe they do want to potentially go in and adjust their minimum price down, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good example. And we had previously discussed that, especially if you've got a brand new listing, you want to get those bookings as quickly as possible. You also want to get bookings as quickly as possible if you've just stopped getting those bookings. So in PriceLabs, instead of coming over here and saying, you know what, for the rest of my calendar, let's change that minimum, you can come in and say, you know what, these are at 68. I'm going to move these down just a little bit, but only those particular days. And I'm going to put those at 55 and see if I can get them booked up. Now, I arbitrarily picked 55 here, but if you really wanted some insight, you can come right over here and hover over the rate that is being calculated. There's a little bit of noise in here, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but you can come right here to that customized price, and you can see what PriceLabs would be pricing you at before it goes to this minimum price. So for this Friday, we would be recommending 64. You can use that as your price if you wanted to. If I come look at Monday, it's probably going to be a little bit less. That one's 44. So I could look at that and say, all right, PriceLabs wants me at 44. I don't want to be at 44. Maybe I'll go to 50. You can use this tooltip that you see right here to really, really understand where PriceLabs would have me at if I didn't have that minimum. But again, if I see 44 here, my advice is not to go change this to 44. it would be do what we call a date specific override and hit just those dates that are upcoming for you.
Gotcha. Love it. And speaking of that calendar, while we're on here, again, if someone is wondering, how do I look at my calendar and know that my pricing is healthy? What should they be looking for?
Yeah, so the first thing in the calendar to really look at is these colors that you have in here. They are indicators of what's going on in the market. Now, this green that we see, that's normal demand. July in Knoxville doesn't really have anything crazy going on. School's not in session, so not a lot of demand. So what this tells me is I'm going to have to be competitive. A little bit of opportunity here, but then when we start getting into September, you can really see the impact on these things. So I would focus in on, especially if you're trying to get bookings more towards the near term, focus in on where those greens are at, and leave the blues to do their own thing, so to speak. You don't want to come in here and take money off of a college football game that could potentially be a massive
Right.
sale.
Right. Gotcha. So focus on the green.
Yep. Yeah, I would focus in on the greens if you've got to do any date specific overrides. But ultimately, I love this neighborhood data area and being able to see exactly where I sit in the market. Now, inside of here, and again, this can be a beast. So please, if you hop in here, take a big deep breath. Take some of these hyperlinks. Hit up Kyle at PriceLabs. I'll pop on a call and show you around. I've got plenty of videos, I think, out on YouTube where I preach the gospel of the neighborhood data, so to speak. But you can come right in here, and you have a very helpful comp set area as well. And in this comp set area, you can go in and you can select. It looks chaotic here. You can select from the map if you want, or you can come to your managed competitors and find people around you. So it's based off of proximity right now. So I can come and say, what are my neighbors doing right now? What do they have going on? I'm going to bring this up real quick. And then this can help me understand where I'm positioned versus the people that are actually next door to me. And again, on the comp set, ideally, you would go and pick some that actually are very, very similar to you. A little bit more dialed in, not necessarily just your next door neighbors. But when you go in and you set this up, you can really see some key differentiators. Now, my pricing is incredibly low during this period, but if I go out here into the summer, or not the summer, the peak football season, I can see my pricing here. Holy moly, that guy thinks very highly of himself for the football game. But I can actually go in here and now see how people are pricing and how they're performing. If Bluebird Bungalow was my true competitor, and you can go in here, you can click on their Airbnb link to look at it, and in all honesty, go based off feel on these competitors. Go for the ones that look like yours, that have the same amenities. You know, maybe you've got a pool. Try to find one that has a pool in here. But you can actually look and see where they've been booked at, what those rates were. As an example, Bluebird, it got booked out at these rates right here where they're grayed out. So that tells me that I should be pretty well in line there. But this will help you out a ton with just understanding what's happening in the market.
Yeah. And I also think, for me as well, since a lot of my properties are at the beach, right? Mm-hmm. Having a comp set that's dialed in to make sure, okay, if I have a beachfront property, I want to make sure my other comps are beachfront. If I have a golf course property, I don't want beachfront properties as my comp set. I want to make sure I'm driving my comp set from golf course properties, if that's what my property is. So, even in my own market, there's a lot of variances. So I think making sure your comp set is dialed in is super important.
Absolutely. And what I've brought up in here, you can see I've got some properties that have a 30-day minimum stay. I wouldn't really want those in my comp set because that's not what my strategy is. But the way that you can do that, and what you were talking about specifically, zoomed in a little bit too much on my computer there. You can come in and you can actually select based off of a region. Sorry, my computer's jumping around a smidge. So we could come in and go right here and say add to comp calendar, add to comp calendar. I wish I had something that was more on a lake over here for us. But here we go. Let's say we wanted to go over here and pick something that is close to Neyland Stadium and on the Tennessee River. You can see them right here. Boom. Add to comp set. And unfortunately, it's a little bit of a lag, so I'm not going to sit here and keep clicking it.
Sure.
You can go on here and actually select the very specific ones that you want. And you have some helpful things right here as well. So if you wanted to look for, if your property is more on the economic friendly side, you could come in and take off these higher priced comps and just narrow it down to the ones that are more like you. So we can see these would be on the low end. These would be on the very low end of pricing right there. So if you're economic, you could do it that way. Or on the other end, we can come in and look at some of the high value ones and see if we can do something with those as well.
Interesting. Love that. Love that. I love that it's visual like that. So good. So good. I'm curious. So we've talked about comp set. Let's say I'm not performing as well as I want to be. Maybe I'm not performing as well as my competitors. How do I know when it's my price? Or how do I know when it's time, hey, I need to look at my listing. I need to look at photos. I need to look at, how I'm positioning myself in the listing. What are your recommendations?
Yeah, I think it's a very nuanced answer. The first thing that I would suggest everybody to look at is their minimum stays. Make sure those are not too restrictive, because that's the one thing that we see that can really, really hold you back, especially with a brand new listing. So the way I would kind of look at it is, let's check our minimum stays. And again, this is going to be more for new listings. Minimum stays first. Let's check our peaks and see if those make sense to us. So again, if I come and look at my calendar, these peak dates are going to be around football time. Those make a lot of sense to me. It doesn't seem astronomical. I don't look at this and get sticker shock like, oh my God, this person's going to leave me a 4-star review if they pay $528 for my property. So that's one thing that I would look at. The other thing, after you get all of that visualization, if you know your rates are in line, you can, again, we can go to neighborhood data and have that nice little visual up top. And I say nice visual, but I'm sure some people are going to be like, that's not that pretty, Kyle. We can look right here and I can look and say, I know my rates are bookable from here, at least up until September 3rd. There's not much else I can do with that. Check my minimum stays. Why wouldn't I get booked here? You would want to go first, obviously make sure pricing is being synced and all of that. Make sure you don't have something crazy happening on the OTAs. You didn't accidentally turn on Airbnb smart pricing and it's now taking over what PriceLabs is doing. But then ultimately you're getting to a very important part of this. And regardless, even if you're performing well, I would say about once every 3 months, you should be reviewing your listing and looking at the photos. If you happen to be in a market that is seasonal, rotating photos can be very, very beneficial for you. Like if I were trying to get this particular property booked up and it was June, July, August, I'd probably have a lead photo that has something sports related, because that's the big selling point here. If you're in ski season, entering ski season, having that updated. But ultimately, I would say take a look at your rates, minimum stays, and then not doing this to sell anything, but you have a listing optimizer tool here at PriceLabs where you can go in, drop your Airbnb listing in there, and then I'll pull this up real quick so we can see what it will look like for you. It'll take just a moment to load. But basically, it gives you a scorecard on everything, from your listing title to your images to your descriptions, amenities, and it really analyzes everything, because there's some silly little things that impact particular Airbnb's algorithm. One I always bring up is the essentials. You may have every single thing in your home that you're renting out, but if you don't check that essentials box, you're going to be dinged just a little bit, because you never know. Maybe somebody doesn't book you because they don't think you have plates and silverware and all that. But really what it is Airbnb's looking at it saying they're not thorough in their build out, and we need to grow. We need to make sure our guests are happy. So this is a great tool for you if you get into that situation. But again, pay attention to what your base price recommendation is in PriceLabs, and then ultimately you'll be in good shape there. But about every 3 months or so, check that listing, use the listing optimizer if you can. The other thing to always remember, and I know I'm kind of bouncing around on things, I get really excited talking about revenue management. Respond to your reviews. That is such it's a good review. Great. Thank you so much. Come back and see us. It's a bad review.
Thank you so much for your feedback.
Definitely. And then fix. If you get bad feedback, fix what they tell you to fix. Don't let somebody else go in there and have to leave a review that says, hey, your toilet plunger.
Amen. Amen. This is something that I feel like I get on a soapbox about, and I couldn't agree more. Respond to every review, regardless how good, bad it is. I've written all kinds of blogs on how to respond to a bad review. So if you want to find out, actually, I'll link it in the description below, because I think sometimes that's why people don't respond, because they're not quite sure what they should be saying. And boy, oh boy, responding to every review is so important. I also think tracking every review is so important. And that's a whole other video series, which we won't get into right now. But I think it's, data, just like we're utilizing data for our revenue management. Data is such an important piece of the entire ecosystem when it comes to the performance of our short-term rental business. And that's what this is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's so many things now. If you are lucky enough to have incredible social media bookings coming in, or incredible direct bookings coming in, you aren't necessarily at the mercy of the OTA, so to speak. But there's so many different layers that impact where you actually sit in the algorithm with Airbnb. Responsiveness, having the right price at the right time are two of the biggest ones that can really position you high. And obviously 5-star reviews and getting bookings and making money for Airbnb are way, way up there too.
There you go. Love it. I'm curious, from your, vantage point, how often do you feel like folks should be checking their performance metrics here in PriceLabs? And which ones do you feel like are the ones that they should be paying the most attention to the most often?
Yeah, I don't think you have to be, it's not something that you have to be in here every day. If you're coming up on a really big revenue period, maybe you get in there a little bit more often. Like if you're a month out of your booking window for peak season, maybe you're in here a little bit more often. But I think generally speaking, once a week is enough for a majority of people, especially if you trust what the system is doing. If you go in and put a bunch of layers of things on there, it can sometimes backfire for you, and you might have to get in a little bit more often and move things around. But you have so much information here at your disposal. Not everything has to be used. Again, I would say come in here, take a look at these metrics, and see if anything, resonates with you. Personally, I've given you those that I think are most important: recommended base price to base price ratio, min price hitting dates, and bookings pickup. But those will only help you understand where the tool might need to go. Understanding your booking window is so incredibly key to really being able to generate maximum revenue. So I'm going to go back here. That's kind of where we started, but I'm going to come back to this and give this just a second to load up. Unfortunately, here we go. We're coming down here. And again, booking window, what that means is you should expect to have half of your occupancy for any given period around the time that you reach this booking window. Now, I don't want to confuse you all, but our average is 29 for this property. That's for the entire calendar year. My average market occupancy is 65%. So what these two metrics are saying, I should be at least 32% occupancy on average whenever I'm about 30 days out. So we should get some bookings in that month to 2 month range, and then we should have some probably a little bit after that. But depending on the market you're in, these change drastically. Now we can see July and August are expanded out, June as well. but I want to show you a different market real quick, and that is Breckenridge, Colorado. And in Breckenridge, we've got peak ski season. We've also got mud seasons, and these interact totally differently. So get this opened up real quick. And when we come down here, here's where we're at. So we're at 65 days, 50%. Now, for October, people on average book 30 days out. And again, you're getting bookings far out, you're getting bookings last minute, but 30 is kind of that middle of the road, so to speak. But for February, it's 3 times as long. So for October, what this tells me, and I always like to put bookends around it. When I see this 30, that tells me my prime booking window is really 15 days out to about 45 to 60 days out. I should be looking at October right about the time I get in mid-August based off of this data. Now, for February, where it's 96 days out, again, we want to put some bookends. You can make great revenue in February, really up to 5 days out, depending on what you have available. But people will book and they will pay heavily 150 days out. So knowing this, I now know that for me to optimize my February rates, I need to be looking at them in not just February, in January, in December, in November, in October, and even in September. So really, if I were trying to maximize my revenue here, I would be paying attention to all of these months right now. And again, you don't have to make big tweaks to it, but understanding how people book is by far the most important thing, especially if you really want to learn this. All of this is factored in by PriceLabs, but if you want to grow as a property manager and make even more revenue, understanding the booking window is very key.
Love that. Love it, love it, love it, love it. And I'm curious, let's say somebody does want to adjust their pricing. When would you recommend that they adjust their pricing for a specific month or for adjustment of their base price? Like what is your recommendation? When should they use the different pricing levers, shall we say?
Yeah, for the base price, I'm going to say, let's pay attention again to these metrics that we've got over here, particularly the recommended base price and bookings pickup, because this is going to be reactionary, so to speak. This one is the truth. This is coming in right now. So if you are getting bookings and they're coming in and they're rolling, that's going to influence you, and you should go update your base price if it's really, really coming in. Now, I say that, and there's caveats in it as well. If you've hammered your rates down in the near term and you've gotten a bunch of bookings, maybe you don't go and update your base price. But if you're getting a lot of bookings that are more farther out, that are around that booking window, that's a big key for you to go in and bump your base price up. If you see something, like if you're looking at your calendar and you see something that just inherently feels incorrect, feel comfortable to go in and do these date-specific overrides, just like I have here. These dates, I've brought them down just a little bit and said, let's take 10% off of those. Again, you don't want to cut your feet out from under you. Just do 10%, 5%, and then add 5% to them if you feel the need to it. But anytime you see an opportunity for yourself, that's going to be where you go in and make that adjustment. Now, if you don't feel comfortable enough looking at the market data and identifying those opportunities, the tool will work to help you out here. But understanding the neighborhood data page is going to be super, super key for you if you do want to learn it and get in there and start making those tweaks.
Love it. Kyle, this is so helpful. I so appreciate you taking time to come on and educate everyone who is watching. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love this.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and I have mad respect for the STR sisterhood. I've got a sister that's my best friend. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So now you know how to evaluate whether your pricing is actually performing. But what happens when your market heads into low season and everything changes? Because the strategy that works beautifully during peak season may be completely wrong when demand slows down. In the next video, Kyle is showing us how PriceLabs responds to seasonality, how to think about pricing and minimum stays when demand drops, and why low season does not automatically mean you should slash your rates. Click into the next video and let's build your low season strategy.